The following interview is a presentation of Ofiɔ Media. It first aired on KXLU Los Angeles. My guest today is Tristan Honsinger, an absolute giant of improvised music and jazz whose career spans many decades and several continents. Honsinger's work is too unique to summarize, so rather than try, I think the best course of action is to simply dive right into the interview. Tristan Honsinger, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
To start with, I want to ask, of all the musical performers, or of all the performers in general, I should say, who have come across my radar, you must be one of the least constrained in the sense of one of the least limited by people's expectations about how music should be or about how art should be. You seem to create along every possible axis, not just music, not just theater, not just speech and other kinds of texts, but really everything all at once. A kind of, I think of it as sort of an all-out creative assault, if that word can be sort of separated from its violent connotations. How do you tap into this deep wellspring of creativity that seems to be such a critical feature in so much of your work, and that allows you to be creative along so many different axes simultaneously?
Well, it's all about history. Not that history is very important at this moment, but I was turned on by Buster Keaton. I was turned on by Pete Mondrian. I was turned on by Dostoevsky. Many different sources throughout my life. And I've come to the point where the cello is just one of the mediums. And I do this, I suppose, quite naturally because I've been doing it so long. The fluxus movement, if you know what that is, it's a total art movement, and that inspired me greatly. So that's why I do everything at once, or maybe not at once, but somehow here and there.
Mm, mm. I wonder if you can talk about the importance of theater in your music, or maybe a better way of asking that question is the importance of music in your theater, or maybe just the mutual importance of.
Well, theater abides in the musician, theater abides in the dancer, theater abides in the actor. So it is underneath, whether you like it or not, it is underneath the theater. Take Louis Armstrong, take Fats Waller. It's part of it, you know. So yeah, I believe today is the time to express all the mediums, all the possibility of the possibility to express something in association with something else. Now, it's hard to explain, but I suppose at the moment it is difficult and it is easy.
Mm, mm. I feel like I'm jumping all over with these questions, but if you'll bear with me, I mean, sort of along this thread of putting things together, I was lucky enough to see a performance of your Hopscotch group in Berlin a couple years ago, where you had a cook on stage, you had a dancer on stage, a couple upright bassists.
You saw that. You saw that performance.
I did. It was absolutely
that's my
spectacular.
group, and well. Thank you. Yes, that's what I'm working on at the moment. This type of performance, let's say. It's come to a performance. It's no longer a highlight of some medium. It's altogether. And yeah, it's I've been doing this so long that somehow I you see, you have to bond with people. You have to get their confidence and their courage. You have to show them that they can do it. And because it is necessary, they do it. You see, in this world, we do really what we need, not what we want. And this is quite a very ancient saying, I believe. So this is a way. It's only one way. It's a way.
I spoke with Joël Grip a few weeks ago, who's a frequent collaborator of yours, and he made a statement, something to the effect of that when he met you, or that working with you sort of pulled back a curtain inside of him, and he's of the feeling that that it's not only him who's experienced you that way, but that a lot of people, I guess, have that that reaction or that awakening when they encounter you. Can you talk about sort of, I guess, what you've found in yourself that allows you to mentor other people that way, and about sort of mentorship in general, maybe?
Well, I'll tell you a story. When I went to Italy the first time, uh, I could speak French, and in Italy, I traveled to Florence, and I met a man. I was playing on the street, and I met a man who joined me right on the street, and I in this way I realized that because you are doing something that is extremely particular, you naturally draw in the people because of their curiosity. And so when I got to Italy, I shut up and listened and looked and played at night until, because of my knowledge of the French, I could open my mouth and talk Italian. And this is about humility. And I've learned through my travels that humility is the ingredient to find these particular people.
On the topic of you performing as a street musician, I was reading something that Joël Grip had written about you, and it was also his opinion that your sort of background performing as a street musician maybe had something to do with your ability to really, reach out and sort of grab audience members beyond the typical concert performance context, and really sort of reach something deeper in people. Can you talk about a little more about your experiences as a street musician, and about how that maybe informed what you do today?
Well, I tell this story because you, for instance, you can stand on the street, play your heart out, and if you are playing for no one, everybody will pass. But if you say, well, I need an audience, so I just change my my mind or my disposition, and I start gathering people through the power of song. You see, knowledge is very long, but ignorance is song. So when you are singing, you are attracting through the tones something that attracts these people, and that's basically how I do it. Also, when I give workshops, basically it's the same way.
Hmm.
Do you understand?
As much as I can.
Okay. I hope I understand myself.
I'm always learning from you. I mean, this is our first time speaking, but through your work over the years, I feel like I've learned incredibly a lot. So
Oh, well, thank you.
no, it's a genuine statement, and there's always more to learn in what you have to say, but I understand as much as I can. Um, you mentioned Buster Keaton at the top of this interview. And you know, him being such a sort of timeless uh performer, someone whose work sort of, I think, transcends you know, the 20s, or you know, whenever it was that he was creating.
Do you want to know a story
I'd love
about
to.
Buster Keaton? Well, his parents were on a circuit in those days, in the 20s or whenever it was, the burlesque circuit, or it's another name for it. And his parents, he was born, and his parents left him in the hotel room to go do their performance in the theater. So while they were doing their performance, a tornado hit the hotel and carried Buster in a garbage can outside of town. They found him. He was the godson of Houdini, and he could use his body as a rag, a dirty rag on the street. Now, that for me was so inspiring. So he became someone that I literally followed. I saw all his movies. And the movies that are best shown with him is with Fatty Arbuckle, the great comedian. And they have some films that are divine. So why not? He's one of my mentors. Yes.
Mm, mm. I'm also wondering to what extent you see yourself as being influenced by Japanese theatrical forms. I'm thinking, for example, that you chose to include the Buto artist Hisako Horikawa in that Berlin performance of Hopscotch that I mentioned a few minutes ago. But I
Yes.
also sense that there might be a connection beyond just that single
Well,
collaboration.
I've been to Japan, and I've worked with Min Tanaka, um, and so I did get to see a kabuki theater one time, and it also inspired me greatly. How the thing is a total piece of theater with music and an entrance. It is absolutely astounding when you see it. You're totally enchanted. So yes, that also helped me gather good uh, good information about what I wanted to do myself. Yes.
Mm, mm. Um, I read, I think it was in the introduction to the book Wander and Wonder, that you were inspired to improvise, or you began improvising after observing a fox. Is this true? And can you say something about this event in your personal history as an artist?
Well, let's say that the fox could be a bear, or it could be. I think that story is a little bit. It's true, but it's not true. Actually, it was about a fish. I went fishing with my brother. I was 10 years old, and my brother was 5. And my aunt let us go into the lake and fish. And uh, we put our hooks in the water and waited. And then my brother, 5 years old, got a huge bite. And as I took the pole out of his hand to try to catch this fish, he jumped out of the water, looked at us, and jumped back in the lake. And I said, now this is a master improviser. That is the story.
Amazing, amazing. Um, in a lot of your recent work, you ask a question that's really kind of gotten stuck in my head. And I suspect it may be more of a koan than really an answerable question, meaning that, maybe it is a question, but a question without an answer. But all the same, it comes back to me quite frequently. So I want to turn it back to you. The question is time a tomato?
Um, this is what a child might say. Is time a tomato? Well, I would say time is nothing. There is no time. Now, this is the most inspiring thing, to know that there is no time. It doesn't exist. So our measurements and uh, our how do you say, when we try to figure something out, uh, there it is basically going to the future, our conception of time. So, but if you meditate, now is the time. And this great statement of Charlie Parker is extremely revealing. But as you say, I cannot answer that question.
Mm, mm. Another question that may be equally unanswerable, but I'll ask it anyways. Can you say a little bit about the relationship between life, death, and creation, or maybe a more specific way to
Well,
ask it?
I'll tell you something. Um, Poverty is the necessary ingredient for a creative journey. I'm at a point in my life where death is revealed itself already. And I believe that in these last 2.5 years, I have exploded with creative things. So, of course, life and death is the divine comedy, isn't it?
I found an old interview with you in which you talk in so many words about being a conduit for music, or maybe a conduit for creative expression, rather than maybe the original source of that expression. I wonder if you could expand on that idea, and maybe in your answer also connect it to the balance that you strike in your own work between spontaneous creation and creation in advance.
Yes, I think this is very, very difficult to talk about. You see, I really do have a problem to explain it. I can explain it, let's say, in tones. If you play certain tones, you awaken people. You awaken the world, let's say, because we are all connected. So this game of prefabricated and spontaneous becomes hopefully one of the same. I know this is not a very good explanation, but I think we would have to talk maybe 2 hours about this. So let's leave it and talk about something else, please.
Sure. Well, maybe by way of a follow-up that's easier to approach. I've noticed that the compositions of Thelonious Monk often creep into your performances in one way or another, or at least your recent performances. Can you say a little bit about your relationship to Monk as I don't know, as whatever he means to you?
Well, he means to me that I suppose creativity well, what I really do like is the names he gives for his pieces. And of course, he's one of the great 20th century composers as well. And his undying originality inspired me greatly, as Duke Ellington, another one. Yes, these people have done incredible things. And yes, I do appreciate Mr. Monk very much.
Getting back to something that you mentioned earlier on in this interview, you mentioned going to Italy, I guess before you had learned Italian, and then learning to speak there. You had already spoke French. How many languages do you speak? Because
Well, those two I speak quite well. English as well. I speak not a very good Dutch, but I speak Dutch, and even worse, German. So I speak, let's say, three languages quite fluently, and two languages that are bashed up with my errors.
And in your performances, I've seen you break into Italian. I've seen you speak in a variety of languages. What how does being, I guess, multilingual connect to the kind of multivocality of your work?
Well, it puts everybody into a conundrum. And I think that when you're talking, people want to understand. But it's not only about the understanding, it's about the beauty of speaking a different language that it's a performance that, let's say I start talking in Italian, you don't know who I'm talking to, right? And I'm not talking to the audience. So who am I talking to? And this brings a great deal of wonder to the whole problem, that I'm talking languages that no one understands, right?
Mm.
So, yeah.
And this idea of the way that you interact with an audience, or that you maybe perform past beyond an audience, how does it connect to what you mentioned earlier about sort of the interconnectedness of everybody?
Yeah. Well, we see, we understand, or do we understand, that we are all related. So it's obvious when you make a performance that you are relating to a multiple uh, uh, source of ideas and expressions.
Mm, mm. Um, and I guess this is not so connected, but I want to also ask you about the importance of conversation and conversationality in your work. I mean, talking about um, sort of person to person or person beyond person performance. For example, in your more recent performances with Joël Grip, who I have mentioned a couple times already, you may be talking to each other, and then the conversation might shift to maybe include somebody who's not even in the room. Also, in the 2021 book that you wrote, Wander and Wonder, um, which is full of writings of yours. Many of these writings take the form of conversations. If I can quote an excerpt, just for the benefit of our listeners, um, piece number 33 in that book is actually it says conversation at the top of that piece. Uh, it begins with A saying, "I'll put a latch on the armadillo's shell," uh, to which B responds by asking, "Are you a pancake?" A then says, "Maple tree on fire." B, "Without a dry mouth, it would be impossible." A, "Only on Sunday or someday." B, "On the other side of the spoon." And I'm not going to read the entire piece, but it's a wonderful piece and a wonderful book that I recommend our listeners check out. Yeah, conversationality.
Well, it's not just conversation. You see, it's a way, it's a code. We can do this spontaneously as well because we know the story underneath. And so these associations make the conversation absurd, surreal, because it is associative thinking, right? And this is very, very important. If you can think associatively. And by the way, I'm diagnosed as being bipolar. And people, they ask me, well, how do you do this? And it's a little bit unexplainable, but this associative thinking is the modern world, right? It's the dream world. It's perfect for plays, Samuel Beckett, UNESCO. It's all about associative thinking, right? And associative thinking is a great study. And so in my workshops, we do these exercises trying to grab associations. So yes, this is really kind of really the essence of my work, is to find people that can understand associative thinking. Because it is a mystery.
And would it be accurate? I mean, I'm putting this out there because I think it might, but would it be accurate to say that even when you're working in a strictly instrumental idiom, this associative type
Oh,
of...
yes. Oh, yes, in music as well, you see. It doesn't abide in movement, whatever. You can start, yeah, this is how we work.
So I wonder, do you see your approach as being very different, or maybe being any different, when you're working in strictly instrumental music versus music that has a lot of speech versus music or performance where your body is a big part of the performance?
It seems to be that I do almost everything. Like I remember when I worked with Mr. Taylor, I would naturally get up and start moving with my cello, and yeah, things started to happen because I had to understand how is this man? How do I understand this man? Right? And through working with him, I understood finally how to work with him. But my way is through associated thinking. So I worked with him. I was singing, playing, and dancing at the same time.
I actually do have quite a few questions about your experience collaborating with different artists over the years. But one more question that's, I guess, a little more directly focused on you before I get there. You've laid down musical roots in so many different places. For instance, as you mentioned before, you've performed quite a bit in Japan since at least the 80s, and you've done a fair amount of recording over there. You have an ongoing project in Canada called In the Sea with Nicholas Kayola on bass and Joshua Zubot on violin. And you've also been making festival appearances in Canada for many years, as well as I think having lived there maybe in the 70s.
Yes.
In Berlin, where I think you lived at least up until COVID struck. You seem to have a very strong community of collaborators there. We talked earlier about your ongoing Hopscotch project there.
Yes.
And then in Italy, you mentioned having lived there, and you've lived in Amsterdam as well. Can you talk about having so many different groups and collaborators scattered across so many different locales?
Well, It's just the way Europe operates. Honestly, you have to. I usually, because I'm always on the bread line, so I usually follow the music. Right when there is something important, a movement that's going on, I try to follow it. Yeah. I follow the music where it happens, right? And so yeah, you collect. I'm I'm not saying that it's good to collect, but you do assume a load of possibilities. But the language, it becomes an international language, right? Somehow. The whole language of performance. I think we're coming to another. Well, I'm trying to embrace all the possibilities, but if you look back long and long ago, I believe that's what they were doing as well, right? It wasn't just one thing. And this is what I'm investigating as my life's work.
Yes. Well, yeah, to ask you about some of the people you've collaborated with over the years, since you just mentioned Cecil Taylor, why don't we start with him? Are there any reflections you'd care to share about your time with him?
Oh, well, I first worked with him in Amsterdam, and somehow we connected, and he took an interest in my position, and so we continued working together. That's basically, we had something in common. What that is, I don't know, but I believe we did have something in common. So I can say we had some extremely strange performances, even bad performances, and we've had the opposite, incredible, miraculous performance. So yes, I was indeed grateful to the man for giving me the possibility to work with him. Thank you, Cecil.
Mm, mm. I wonder if you'd like to share any reflections about the late incredible trumpeter Toshinori Kondo, who you collaborated with quite a bit in the 80s.
Yes, well, we started this fabulous group called This, That, and the Other, and we worked, and well, Kondo was extremely strong in that time, so he gave me a lot of courage at that time, because I was I had started writing music for a song, so we had an Italian singer in the group. Well, it was all Japanese, South African, French, Italian, and 2 Americans, and this was the group. And we made also a record in Japan, which was a very big. I enjoy it very much. It's called "What Are You Talking About?" Yes, he was a great colleague and a good friend. I still don't know how he died, or anything, but I did send a letter to his wife. But yeah, that's all I know about Mr. Kondo.
Mm. Actually, that record that you mentioned, "What Are You Talking About," was my introduction to your work about half of my lifetime ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's one that I return to all the time. I mean, I can never get tired of it. For our audience, it also featured the great drummer Sabuto Izumi and another late giant, Peter Kowald on bass.
Yes, it was quite a group because the drummer found himself in jail, and Cobalt was there for a spiritual journey into meditation. That didn't last very long. So Kondo hired him because he was in Japan for quite some time. And that was the band. Uh, it was supposed to be other people, but it turned out to be that group. Yes. And
Mm.
I have to say, it is a very nice record. Thanks to Mr. Kondo.
It's a wonderful piece of music. When this interview is on the radio, I'll definitely play an excerpt of it. In the 90s, you did some work with the legendary South African drummer Louis Moholo. For example, on your 1996 album Map of Moods, he was the only non-string player on that record. Can you talk a little bit about him or about working with him?
Yes, Mr. Louis Moholo is one of those people that really observes in a very good way. I first met him on an ICP. He replaced Tom Bennink in the ICP, and I was very struck by his sensitivity and his dynamic power. And I remembered that, and I asked him to join this string group because he could play so softly, and he enjoyed it, which is something that not many drummers can say, that they enjoy playing very softly, right? And Africans do have an enormous sensitivity to dynamics. And so he was the perfect person for what I wanted to do with this string group. Yes. And so he became a permanent member. Yes. And we are still great friends. Yeah. A long way ago. a long way away. Yes.
Mm, mm. Um, and since we're talking about him, did you have any contact with any other members of the Blue Notes, the legendary South African group, who I think by the 70s?
I played once with Johnny Dyani in a string quartet in FNP Productions, and I've played with Dudu Pukwana with the ICP. And so those three members I played with. I was supposed to. You see, what happened was Mongezi Feza died suddenly, and we were supposed to get together with another group, and he was to come to Holland and play with us. And it happened just before that he died suddenly out of a misunderstanding, but he's no longer here. So I actually, I knew them very well. It was a great group of people, really. And they basically influenced the whole London scene. I mean, deeply, yes. So it was a strong group of musicians, yes.
Do you have any specific anecdotes you remember that you'd like to share about Johnny Dyani?
Well, I'll tell you the story that happened to me. Okay, I asked Johnny for a concert in Italy with Kent Carter, myself, and Johnny, right? So it comes the day of the performance, and there's no Johnny. So I call Johnny up. He says, "Hey man, I thought it was next month." So I said, "Oh, Johnny, no, it's tonight." And he said, "Well, what can I do?" I said, "You're right, you know." So I immediately engaged one of my mentors. His name is Raphael Garrett. He was a bass player from Chicago. Well, he learned bass in prison with Wilbur Ware. And I played with him a lot. I'd go to his house and we'd, we'd talk and play. And so he was the third member. And yeah, that was the story of Johnny.
Fantastic musician, and also just kind of this larger than life personality from all the stories I've heard.
He was amazing. It's amazing to see them, honestly, how they operate on stage. It's really, because Dudu is the Mr. Clown in person, honestly. A great clown, as well as a great musician.
I never knew that about him. Huh. Wow. Well, you mentioned the ICP, the Instant Composers Pool, when you were talking about Louis Moholo. I'm curious, first of all, what it's like to play with an ensemble, even on and off, for so many decades, and what kind of creative connections emerge between musicians when you play together for, the better part of a lifetime.
It's difficult. This group has always been the most difficult group that I have ever joined. Not specifically, I suppose it's how Misha devised the whole plan of the ICP. And I was always not really knowing what to do, I have to say. And because of this, Misha put me into a, kind of a confused way. But in the fact that he did this, taught me a lot about how we can play together, right? By being ourselves and by creating an atmosphere that is how do you say, it is confrontational, and yet it is how do you say, confrontational and comfortable in the same sense. It's very difficult for me to talk about this, really, because it's a special. But I can see that Misha had me for many reasons, right? So he kept me. Some people didn't like it, other people did. You know how it is. Misha was like that. But yeah, I'm still learning in this group. Yes.
Mm, mm. I wonder if there's anything you'd care to share about the other founder of the ICP, Han Bennink, the drummer.
Oh, he's my big brother. What can I say? All due respect to Mr. Magic. Yeah. Well, I have good things to say and bad things, but I won't say good things or bad things. I just love him.
Mm, mm. Um, Another ICP collaborator who you've worked with a lot outside of that group is the Reeds player Michael Moore. I wonder if you have any reflections you'd care to share on him.
Oh, he's a very important figure in the ICP as he does many arrangements of different people, not only famous, really famous jazz musicians, but other people and himself. Yeah, he's I would say he's one of the leaders in the group uh, for practical purposes. Yes.
Mm.
And yes, Mike is my friend.
Um, I wanna also ask you about some of the people who you've been working with quite recently. I mentioned a couple times earlier in the interview the bassist Joël Grip, who I was actually lucky enough to speak with a couple of weeks ago, and who in many ways seems to be a protege of yours, if I can sort of editorialize that way. Yeah, any thoughts on Joël?
Well, I suppose he just needed a prick in the ass, and he was off. Man, he's a genius. Don't tell anybody.
Um, I also want to ask about a really wonderful project that I only actually found out about as I started doing the research for this interview. That project is Tristan Honsinger's House of Wasps, featuring Chino Shuichi on piano, Takashi Seo on bass, and Yuriko Mukomjima on violin.
Mujima, yeah. Yes, that is a project. We've already made one recording in Japan, and we're about to go to Japan again and make another record. So I've written the music, and when I get back to Berlin, we'll probably do it in October or November. Yeah. So we're still very, very connected.
Wonderful. And to close, I want to ask again about this group Hopscotch. You mentioned that that's very much an active group. What can we expect to see in the future from Tristan Honsinger's Hopscotch?
Well, I would dearly like to do it in uh, in Texas. I've been working with Dave Dove. Uh, he makes concerts and teaches uh, music in schools, and there are some very, very talented people in Houston. And if I get a chance and I live that long, I would like to do a kind of hopscotch in Texas as well.
Mm.
If there are some really very good people down there. So yeah, it might come to America. Who knows? The idea. Hopscotch is just an idea.
Mm. Mm.
Yes. Well, I'm planning this coming March to do it in a festival in Austria. So Yeah, we might succeed. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I hope that performance gets documented so that those of us back stateside can check it out.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure it will be. Yes.
Well,
All
Tristan
right.
Honsinger,
Well, Adam, go ahead.
no, just to say it's such an honor to get to talk to you, and as much as I've learned from checking out your work over the years, I've learned so much from this conversation as well. So really can't thank you enough for making yourself available.
Well, I'm pleased to talk to you today. Yes.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.